Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the voice of Springfield, the person you all know and some of you love, Rich Miller.
Thank you, Paulie. Thank you once again for inviting me back. I never think of Christmas when I think of Rich Miller, but maybe after 10 more years of doing this, others will. Steve Brown gets paid a lot of money to say three things, basically. That is currently under review. That's 5 things. It's for decades. He's never changed the script. And yet, he's still employed. All right, so. Well, that's why he's employed. We don't say too much. I had the rare, excuse me, privilege to speak at Judy Bar Topinka's memorial service earlier today. Thank you. And it was, some of you were there. And it was quite an event for quite a woman. One thing, I got my hand all wet now, I can't. The thing that I spoke of, other than the jokes and what have you, was take just a moment and think about the trait that you admired in her the most, whatever that would be. Her plain spokenness, her humor, whatever, her frugality, whatever it was that you really truly admired. Think about it. Now emulate it. See, we'll never have another Judy Bar Topinka in this state, in this world. So there's no way really for that to live on in our body politic, which now has this huge hole. And so by emulating one thing that you admired in her the most, then we can actually keep her, in a way, alive. So think about it, and then do it. Because I think that would be the greatest tribute of all. All right. Now I gotta move on, because I've been tributed out, let me tell you. I've never seen so many tributes to one person in my life. And she deserved it, but it's time to move on and get things going. I was here a year ago, spent most of the time warning you folks about how you weren't taking Bruce Rauner seriously enough. He's just another rich white man. He won't spend the money. He don't know what he's doing. He's got Wisconsin people working on his campaign, for crying out loud. Ha 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 ha. Oh, baby, what a year this has been. Lost my place. So, it has been a weird year, a crazy year. Probably the most interesting campaign I think I've ever covered in my life. I kind of describe it as, I don't play video games very much, but if you ever play a video game and then you get to a level where you're just like, everything's coming at you really fast, and you gotta look at it constantly and monitoring the screen and reacting and this and that and that. That's pretty much what my last year has been. It's just been a constant stream of emails, text messages, instant messages, Facebook messages, phone calls, any kind of communications you can imagine. And a lot of the text messages were, I sent you an email 3 minutes ago. How come it's not posted on the blog? It's like, dude, I was going in the bathroom, all right? Come on. I was really glad to see it end because, man, that was rough. And I'm not sure I could do that alone again, so we'll see what happens down the road. But after a year of watching Governor-elect Rauner, getting to know him a little bit, getting to know his staff a bit more, I had some observations that I thought I'd share about the man, the myth, the legend, the shake it up guy. He is one of the most disciplined politicians I've ever met. Now, let me give you a little story. He decided that he wanted to sit down with me. Just me and him, no staff, just me and him. So I brought a bottle of whiskey. He stuck to beer. I could not get him. I've made up or devised various ruses, tricks, things, just whatever over the years to get people to talk to me. Because it's not always easy to get people to talk to you and to tell you things that you want to know and they don't want you to know. So, like, there's the F word, right? Once I hear a politician say the F word to me in private conversation, I know I got him. Because they never say that word in public. If they get caught saying that word in public, oh no, bad things will happen. So they discipline themselves. But, you know, the first time I ever heard Speaker Madigan say the F word, yes, he actually does use that word every now and then, I thought, man, this is great. I'm really in it now. Rauner started off like the first sentence. You know, F this, F that, right? So that didn't work. Like, all right, well, that failed. There's alcohol, but he holds his alcohol well. There's just general BS about mutual acquaintances or friends. And yeah, he'll engage in that. But anytime that conversation veered even a little bit back to his campaign, you could see him visibly stiffen up. And he'd be right back on his talking points. He said, you know, I'll talk to you about anything you want. You know, we can talk about hunting, we can talk about fishing. I don't want to talk about that stuff. My hobby is my job, all right? I got no hobbies. So, nothing worked. 3 hours. I succeeded in getting myself drunk. Telling him a whole bunch of stories I never should have said. Because they're going to come back, man. And he didn't say a damn thing. Some get to know you. Now he's got blackmail material. He's driven. Man, is he ever driven. He'll set a goal, and he will do, as we've seen over the last year, everything he has to do to achieve that goal. Newspaper reporter gets fired. Oh, well. We got an election to win. And if you think he's not driven, you will learn over the next 12 months just how driven this man is. He is a charmer. I told him all my damn secrets. He didn't tell me one. He is really good one-on-one. He's good in a crowd too. He gave a nice little speech today at Judy Barr's memorial. And he did it off the cuff, and I thought he did a really good job. He was also, he was the guy who recruited, when they were gonna form new companies, he would be the guy who was in charge of recruiting the new CEOs of those companies. Now, that requires a ton of charm. He's smart. You know, he's pretty well educated, but he's also smart. But he's also smart enough to know that he needs even smarter people around him on things that he doesn't fully understand. He's savvy. He's got a really good feel for trends, for things that people will respond to, I mean, shake up Springfield, man, right? When you think about it, you know, what was Pat Quinn's slogan? What was his campaign about? Maybe the minimum wage? Maybe, you know, did Bruce Rauner think no one would ever find out? That's not much of a campaign slogan. But everybody knows, everybody, and you can go grab somebody on the street who doesn't get involved in politics, and they know, shake up Springfield. It was brilliant. It worked because people wanted it. They wanted it done. They demanded that it be done. His downsides, and there are some, as long as there's none of his lawyers are in the room, I will continue. He's always on, all right? He's always on. Like I said, you can't talk to him about something related to the campaign or the government or what have you without him giving you his talking points. So you talk to legislators, you know, he said he sat down with, you know, 50 or 30 Democrats so far, or whatever, 50, and then, you know, met with over 100 legislators either by phone or in person. And you talk to some of them, and you get the impression real quick that he's telling everybody the exact same script, right? It's the same thing. So he's talking to a Democrat, he'll talk about his Democratic wife, right? Always the Democratic wife. Who is actually, I just met her for the first time today, believe it or not. And she's better looking in person than she is on TV.
That's why we have you.
That's right, just for that kind of stuff. That's why you come. Anyway, where was I at? Yeah, his tendency to stay on message all the time. So what happens when you do that? And even in private meetings, when you do that, the people get the impression that you might be a phony, right? Because you're using a line on me, man, that I heard you say 100 times last year on the campaign trail. So, you know, the first 20, I might have found them mildly amusing. The next 80, I found them boring, and now you're using them in a private meeting with somebody you want to get something out of. It's not a good trait, to put it mildly. He is, oh hell, I lost the last page. Oh, not the last page, the next page. Man, did I screw this up? Oh, sorry about that. Always number your note cards, but always keep them in order. Man, he's inexperienced, okay? He's a very experienced businessman. He's a very experienced negotiator. He's an experienced recruiter. He's an experienced schmoozer. But, I mean, let's face it, he hasn't really done anything involving this level of government against this level of opposition, right? So you can go up against another business, but try that with Speaker Madigan. It may not get you very far. Try it with your own people, your own Republicans, who've never had to vote for anything in their careers. I mean, no kidding, there's only like 14 left that were there under a Republican governor. Maybe 15. The rest of them, and there's not that many more, but the rest of them who are there have just been sitting back, not always, but for the most part, sitting back, voting no, and let the Democrats take all the heat. And boy, did they ever. So there are just, he is going to need all of the traits that I've talked about, the good traits. He's going to need every one of those. And he's going to have to moderate some of the less than good traits, shall we say, including his real major tendency to put style over substance. He's all about the media pop, and he's all about getting that lead in the story, but he's not really anything about filling in the blanks afterwards. He's going to have to start producing some substance, for crying out loud. The election's over. And the problem is huge, okay? It's huge. So they're talking, you know, maybe 30% cuts, right? Yeah, it's gonna be more than that. They're not counting some stuff that's out there. There's another $1 billion that the state's gonna have to pay on the pension into the pension funds next fiscal year versus this fiscal year because they've, several of the funds altered the way their rate of return expectations. So that, boom, that bumps it up about $800, $900 million. And that's just that. And that didn't get you anything, by the way. You don't get any streets paved. You don't get anything done out of that. It's just shoot, money that goes in a pension fund for a good reason because, you know, promise, pension's a promise, what have you. The Supreme Court's probably going to say, pay it, pay the bill. All right, fine. But that's money that can't be used elsewhere. And they're going to need money elsewhere. Ask any of the legislators here that have any experience in appropriations. You're looking maybe $8, $9 more billion in combined shortfall and combined stuff that's been building up, particularly this fiscal year. Rauner just talked yesterday about $750 million a supplemental that the agencies want to do. With what money? There ain't no money. And so agencies have been spending like the tax hike was going to remain permanent, okay? And what that has done is they're broke. They got no money. And so bad things are about to happen, really bad things. Now, you can talk all he wants about we're going to stick to the 3.75% tax rate. Okay, but magic works on the campaign trail really well. Magic doesn't even, you would need somebody like 10 times as good as David Copperfield to like, whew, all our problems are solved. It's not like making a 747 disappear. This is real things. That 747 never really disappeared, you understand? There was like mirrors or something, I don't know. This is real. You can't wish it away and you can't magically get rid of it any way. So, service tax, okay, there's a couple $billion they can get out of that. The service tax that he talked about during the campaign was really small. That was smart because you start taxing all the services so you get the money that you need to really patch these gaping canyon holes. You know, then you get people saying, well, okay, I was cool with taxing jet rental, but I'm really not cool with taxing my beauty shop services, right? So just tax the jet rental and leave my beautician alone. And it's gonna get ugly. And it's been tried and it's failed before. And so you have a situation where there's gonna be a lot of resistance to that. And now it's the Democrats' turn to sit on their hands and say, well, we could give you some yes votes, but what are we getting for this? We are entering a period of time, unfortunately, because we've just been ill-led, frankly. We are entering a period of time where we are seeing, once again, a financial abyss, a fiscal abyss. It was preventable, but the prevention wasn't done. The only way to solve it is you can't cut yourself out of this. You can't. Not fully. They're going to have to be cuts. I think they're going to have to be some major cuts. I wouldn't advocate any, personally, not one. I mean, but there's going to have to be some major, major cuts. And there's going to have to be some more revenues. So prepare yourselves, because you're about to get hit on both sides. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news at Christmas time. But what the hell? This is Illinois, okay? What did you expect? An upbeat assessment of our future? Please. So he's going to try to shake it up. That's fine. Rhetoric is fine. Actions, however, are now what we need. And I hope he succeeds. We better all hope he succeeds, because we're really, really stuck our collective foot in it this time. All right, on that happy note, I'm glad to take your questions.
If you have, Mr. Miller, I know this is difficult for you to move away from the mic.
Difficult for me.
If we have questions, we have the sheets. Where do we have our City Club people? Raise your hands. Okay, just raise your hand and one of the two folks will get her. Well, very long question, Mr. Mazur.
Can you read it?
Yes. In light of the discussion, Ari, who gets to appoint Topinka's successor in the short and
long
Let me-
term.
how do you see this thing going?
There's another part of that question.
Another part. Why don't you read the question?
The question was, someone suggested that the lame duck officials be replaced immediately rather than wait till January, so that in a true democracy, people can immediately attend to business. Your thoughts on those ideas?
Well, we could ask Wayne Whalen, who was at the Constitutional Convention, and the author, and was actually involved in a floor debate on this very topic, which I had on my website this week. Look, the Attorney General has issued an opinion, and it looks, I'm not a lawyer, but it looks pretty solid to me. And I'm not a politician, but
Like hell you're not.
if
Sorry.
if Quinn wants to go out like a partisan hack, there's gonna be a court battle, all right? Now, let's hope he doesn't, okay? But here's the thing, man. I wrote about this the other day about the comptroller has to be bonded. So the Attorney General can refuse to sign off on the bond. The governor is really boxed in on this, seriously, seriously boxed in. And the only way out of this box that makes him look even a little decent is to just appoint a caretaker until January 12th and let Rauner appoint somebody else. I mean, you think about it from the position of her staff, Topinka's staff. Many of them worked their tails off for her, okay? And she won by 4 points. Now you're just gonna say, well, that election had no consequence at all. The voters elected a Republican, even though it was Topinka, the party of Judy, as she used to say. And you ain't never gonna find another one of those. But it just doesn't seem fair to me, to the people who worked so hard for her, to all of a sudden be out on her cans. And I think the governor ought to take that into consideration as well.
Good answer. We have a couple of questions dealing with the same topic. We have Jay Doherty, our president.
Well, we better read that one.
And we have Bob Mammoth, retired from WGN Radio. Both of them basically say, well, will the old General Assembly come back to extend the current income tax rate? And Mr. Doherty asks, how long will it take Governor Rauner to raise taxes?
Yeah. Well, the answer to the first question is no. The House is adjourned, sine die. They can come back, I guess, if they wanted. The governor, I believe, is going to issue a proclamation maybe today, maybe tomorrow, I don't know, for a special session on January 8th. But that'll be to deal with the special election and blah, blah, blah. They ain't gonna touch that tax increase. The Democrats aren't. Why would they? You know, give them a gift like that? He spent the last year blasting them as corrupt and tax lovers, and so, fine. Biggest tax cut in Illinois history on January 1st. Boom. Welcome, Bruce Rauner. Tell us how you're gonna fix it. We'll put a couple votes on there for you. Now, how long will it take for Governor Rauner to raise taxes? Well, gotta pass a bill. And that ain't gonna be easy because, man, can you imagine, think of the debate. All those quotes from the campaign. Oh, they're gonna stick it to him. The speaker's being really nice to the governor-elect right now. And now Brown disagrees with this analysis, which I brought up to him last night, is that if I was, because Madigan's like siding him with him on everything just about, right? I would be wary of that. I mean, you dig? The man ain't nice to anybody, all right, except his children and his wife. Man, I've never seen him be this nice to a governor-elect. And it's like, wow, he's gonna have a big ask, man. Oh yeah, I did this for you. Now let's go over the list. I did this. I did this. I did this, you didn't even ask. You'll just have to figure out what I want. So anyway, yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to watch this play out, right? The Topinka thing that is an element of disgust for me, particularly. I mean, literally by 8 o'clock the morning that she had died, I mean, the jousting was already beginning. I was up all night. I went to bed at around 7. I woke up at noon, and everybody's talking about a successor already. It's like, geez, I've only been to bed for 5 hours, and you people are already discussing this stuff. That's a disservice to her. Anyway, next question.
Well,
Did I answer it?
well, you went around it a lot.
You know what? He'll raise taxes as soon as he can get the votes.
That's a good answer. Darn right. We'd have been on the
That's a
next
Steve
question.
Brown answer for you.
All right. By the way, what Miller was really discussing was that those of you who understand Greek history and Greek philosophy, think of Odysseus and the Sirens of Circe, and you'll have the real inside look on this. Right, Stella? Okay. Jim Turman, who's no longer allowed to win any Let Us Entertain You certificates. Let's get off this mundane governing and get on to what we really all like, politics. Miller, your predictions on the 2016 U.S. Senate race, Democratic primary candidate, and the general election outcome.
Oh, for God's sake.
Now we're back in City Club, Ron. You know, this Rounder guy's getting much too much pub. Go ahead.
Senator Kirk was at the memorial today. He had a really bad stroke, man. I mean, I've seen him since then in person. But you know what? Mark Kirk is a tough dude. And if Mark Kirk says he's running again, as many of his family and friends and associates who don't want him to for his own good, what the heck do you think he's going to do? He's going to run again. He's just out of New York, raised $400,000 in a single fundraiser. He's going to be tough to beat, man, even in a Democratic year. He won't be able to get around like he used to do. But, I mean, really, he's not going to be walking in parades, but he can ride in a car, right? He can still give speeches. He can still raise the money necessary to run the TV ads. Now, if Hillary Clinton wins the Democratic nomination and is on the ticket, you know, it's going to be a pretty solid year for the Democratic Party in this state. And it's possible that, you know, Kirk could lose because of that. But man, he's very smart about politics. I mean, he really set the template for Bruce Rauner. There's that name again. And very similar types of things were done by both campaigns. Very similar types of messages. And he has a good feel for what Illinoisans want in a Republican. And I would never bet against him. I don't care who's running against him unless it turns out to be Michelle Obama, and then, you know.
Is that your pick?
No, heck no. I don't think Michelle's going to run for that, but if she did, wow. Well, you talk about, you know, one of the things that happened in this last election was middle-class women independent middle-class women turned away from the Democratic Party. Not everywhere, but many places. You know, Michelle Obama might, you know, somebody like that might bring them back. Now, that's what they say Hillary will do. We'll see. But they didn't have a message for the middle class. The Democratic Party, in my opinion, did not have a message. Quinn certainly didn't. And they forgot. They just took them for granted. And losing is that consequence of taking your people for granted that you really should be trying to woo all the time.
Who do you see running on the D side?
On the what? On the D side?
The second half of the question.
The second half of the question, I mean, there's, you know, everybody's talking about it, right? The second half of the question is who's going to run on the Democratic side, right? So everybody's talking about it. There's a whole lot of people out there who would like to see their congressman run for a U.S. Senate seat so they could run for Congress, right? And there's 3, 4, you know, whatever who you talk about, you know, talking about Duckworth and what have you, and there's a lot of legislators in those districts saying, yeah, I will be your #1 supporter.
Good answer. All right, we got.
So, but I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, there's a lot of things. Duckworth would be an excellent opponent, mainly because, you know, they both have their problems, their physical problems, and that would be an interesting race.
Okay. We have a few more questions, Mr. Miller. And
Yes.
as long as you make the answers a tad shorter.
All right.
All right. Dan Montgomery, IFT.
Gee, is that about pensions? Sorry, Dan. No, it's not. Okay.
No, it's not.
Good.
Well, it is, but not really. Do you see any evidence that Rauner will not govern so ideologically? Will he moderate and compromise? 25 words or less.
He'll moderate in some ways, and he won't in others, man. Judy Barr's memorial service today was at International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Those are the guys that funded the Libertarian candidate against Rauner, right? They also funded a lot of hits on Rauner during the primary. Rauner went, made a little joke about it during his commentary. I think all elections, when they're over, people tend to set aside the big guns and pick up the little guns instead. And I think that some of that will happen. But there's going to be, and he hasn't really done it yet because he hasn't really talked that much policy. I mean, for a guy to win an office in a major industrial state like that without really having a clue or giving anybody a clue is, I'm over my 25 words, more like 25 paragraphs. It's kind of ridiculous, but he did it, and people bought into it, and God love him, and so we got a new governor. There are going to be some real fights, but I think he's got a skill set that that'll serve him well as far as the compromise goes. But sometimes, you know, you can't compromise until you fight. Then you do a treaty.
All right. As you know, one commentator called his campaign nounless. I can't think of him, but I heard he's incredibly smart. Maureen Kelly from Governor State University, my old stomping grounds. I've heard Rauner wants to pass the mother of all capital bills. Do you think this is possible in the next 4 years? Good question.
It's probable. First, we need it, and secondly, he needs it. I wrote a column on this in Cranes, which I could just refer you back to, but basically it said, except for giving their relatives jobs or their people jobs or them jobs in contracts, the best way to deal with a legislator, man, is to have a capital bill, okay? So they can have projects for their districts, which helps their districts. They love their districts, helps them. They love them. So one way of soothing these problems with the tax votes and budget votes and all the other votes that are going to have to be done is to have a capital bill. And if he's smart, He'll start on that day one.
We have 2 more questions, Mr. Miller,
And I think he is smart. Go ahead.
we have one, sort of, Brown, you may not have even been there. Oh, yeah, you were. I don't think you were, Rich. Question, this comes from Mo Headington, American Association of University Women. As you can tell, City Club is a big player in the educational community and universities. Yeah. Not even a nod. Okay, here we go. This is from Mo. Women won the right to vote in 1920. Undisputable. Congress passed the Equal Rights Amendment in 1972. Fine. Which required 38 states to ratify it.
Right.
35 states have ratified it. Why can't we get it ratified in Illinois? This is for you old timers, Ms. Wick.
Well,
you want to,
there was a timeline on the amendment, but I think there's people that dispute whether that timeline is actually, enforceable. Why can't we get anything done in Illinois? All right? I mean, what the heck kind of question is that? It's like, why is the sky blue? Sorry, that's my response. Why can't we get anything done in Illinois? That particular thing, I think there was, I think the best thing to do would be to ask Representative Lang. But I think what happened, Lou was getting real close to passing that in the House, but the head count wasn't all it needed to be. In other words, people didn't show up for a veto session. So that's, I think, why it happened this time. Why it hasn't happened since the 70s, well, that's because this is Illinois, all right?
and there was a lady from Southern Illinois who I think is still alive, Phyllis Schlafly, and they all given up. Brown, is that right? They gave out pies to the legend. Pardon?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't. Oh, she lives in Iowa.
Hooray!
It never
We
stopped
finally
her.
lost
Still
somebody.
registered in Illinois.
Never stopped her before. Last question.
All right. Hooray!
It's the biggest response you've got. Another academic. You bring this out in people, Miller.
I don't know why.
It's that Shakespearean roast you had. Do you think? Oh, you're gonna love this. Do you think that I'm not stopping there? Do you think that Rauner? Thanks, Mr. Gates. Do you think that Rauner, as governor, will operate on the basis of end justifying the means? If yes or no, please explain your response. If you can't stick it to Miller, who can you stick?
Well, if you look at his business history, a lot of times, most times, the ends did justify the means. Look at what happened. I mean, he was asked, name one company where you created a whole bunch of good jobs. He was asked that more than once. And the reply is, go to my website. I got a whole list there. There's no list there. GTCR was not about creating jobs. It was about creating wealth for themselves and their clients. Okay? That is an end justifies the means business. So do I think he will continue on with that? Of course he will. I mean, within reason. In politics, there's only so much means you can get away with, right? I guess in business too. But it's a little bit more, I don't know. Anyway, yes, he will do that in order to get things done. And I think actually, without taking it too far, they can get things done. The means may be a capital program that maybe the Chicago Tribune doesn't like, right? Or maybe somebody in this room doesn't like. That doesn't mean that it didn't, get us to justify the end, which is getting us through this crazy session that's coming up. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then if he gets reelected, 4 more. So anyway, yeah, I do believe, and he's pretty good at it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I got a gift for you.